private communication with the counselor, because it's not secure, it's not encrypted, this can be very dangerous for a woman, for instance, just as one example. So we have to be very careful about the use of electronic communication with clients, as you've been saying.
Yeah, no, thank you. We'd love to see that, and we agree completely with that point, and that's where we think people need to actually look at it and be aware of the issues.
Yes. So I'm wondering then if it's possible for your emails, your computer hard drive to be subpoenaed in court.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer, but those are the kinds of questions we need to be aware of. I mean, because the other issues are, when you have a regular session, you write notes, right? Well, if you have email sessions, do you have to keep the transcript? So those are all the kinds of questions that we need to be aware of.
I just wanted to ask if any information has been gathered in the area of how it affects or changes the therapeutic relationship between the client and the counselor, or if anything that came out of your research that would address any change in that area against traditional in-person counseling.
Yeah, the experience, and this is qualitative research, so we caution about making huge generalizations because we didn't interview hundreds and hundreds of people. But the experienced practitioners who we did interview in the 3 years later, they really talked about how the cyber communication became an adjunct to the therapy, that it helped clients by really continuing some of the discussion and some of the work, by allowing the client to reflect more on it. So the clients felt that whatever had happened in the relationship was being, and in the session, was being incorporated. They were working on it themselves. They might be writing it. They might then send it to the worker, knowing the worker was there, so that it was almost an extension of a holding environment. In another study we're doing, clients talked about the knowing that the worker was there. So we're beginning to play with this idea that even if you don't respond, because these experienced workers, they were saying, I received your email, I received your material, if you like, we can discuss it next week. So they weren't having an extra session, but they were responding, as one of the people said, in a kind, gentle, attuned way. I'm here, I know you're in pain, I know you're working, and I'll see you next week and we'll work together. So that was really interesting to us, that 3 years later, people had really thought about how to use cyber in their work. We're seeing the value added.
And I'm just going to add, one thing we found from the other study that was interesting is that the client said that they're rereading it. So they said that they would reread it over and over again. Now the therapists would say that sometimes they had trouble because it took time to write it, but the clients felt by rereading it that they would say, actually, you were there with me, and even though I didn't see you. And so that's when we started to think about this holding environment, that it made a difference. And the other thing we found is that by having that, the clients sometimes seem to be able to help them to self-regulate. But again, as Marianne said, it's qualitative, so we really need to do more. But that really, we were not expecting that at all. But the thing that was very interesting is that the therapists in our other study who were younger felt very uncomfortable. They found it very hard to write, and they were worried that in the writing they were not authentic. The clients felt it was totally authentic. They felt, so there's a disconnect there, and that's very important.
Kate, there's someone just over here.
Okay, last question.
I've been listening to your points about self-regulation and boundaries, and I'm of the generation right before 40s, right before it became prevalent, and I'm sort of that in-between generation. Anyway, I'm wondering, in a way, we could have behaved the same way using the telephone. For example, in between sessions, we could have left messages on the answering machines, outlining our feelings, what we thought of, and then probably they wouldn't have responded to the next session, or they might have called back and said, "I'm sorry, I've received your message, and we'll discuss this in the next session." But I'm wondering there's a problem with boundaries and email and Facebook and all that, and I'm just wondering what you think of drawing the parallel between using the phone, which was an old modality, and now the email, and then what's next? Like, what's going to be the next thing? Because things are progressing to an era where there's very little privacy. And personal time, actually. And then the whole thing about holding and self-regulation. Well, it's like when you're giving a presentation, and we just put our hand up every second to get a response immediately, or do we wait till the end? And that's part of the maturity emotionally for the clients. Can you wait till the next session? That we're going to be there for them, and so on. Just wondering. I thought about all these things while you were talking.
I mean, I think those are all critical questions. In terms of the phone versus, I think it is similar. It's on a continuum. I think one difference is with the phone, I mean, again, I can speak for myself, some clients would do that, but not that many would do it. With electronic communication, it's much more common to do it. And I think the other thing that needs to be looked at, we don't know the answer, is that the notion of privacy is now different. The notion of privacy is changing. So people like the digital natives, and they don't even go near email anymore, and now they're going away from Facebook. But the notion, so for them privacy is going on Facebook and exposing a whole lot of things, but limiting who can have access. But Facebook still has access. So I think what we need to understand, and again, it doesn't mean throw it all out the window, but there's been what we think of as privacy isn't exactly the same. It's shifting, and I think we need to take that into account because, I mean, for me, an example was the Boston Marathon. The day that happened, somebody mentioned something about the trending on Twitter and that they were following it. I was just sort of walking out and I was thinking, why are they doing that about the Boston Marathon? I hadn't heard about the bombings. But then later that night, when I was watching CNN, what they were talking about is because of the trending on Twitters that were happening all day, it made traditional TV feeling like they were, not necessary anymore because people didn't have the patience. So again, it doesn't mean we just go to it, but we need to recognize it. I don't know the answers, but I think those are really the questions.
Marion and Faye, I really want to thank you both for sharing this important research. Your presentation was not only informative and stimulating, but it's given us a lot to think about in terms of the ubiquitous nature of technology and the dramatic changes that is having already clearly in terms of therapeutic relationships, but the real need across organizations and in private practice for people to be thinking really in a forward way and to be talking about this, as opposed to be thinking that, this is not something I'm doing, I'm not involved in cyber counseling, so it doesn't have to do with us. And I was particularly interested in your comments about policies for employers, because I think that's an area where we haven't done a lot of thinking, and probably we need to be encouraging much more conversation about that. Hopefully your research will also not only inspire us to think more about this, but will inspire a lot of other people to do research. It gives me great pleasure to present you with with an honorary, and thank you again so much for this. My new favorite shade is gray, because I think
the color gray and the work that we do. I'm an organizational leader, and as I'm hearing about all of this, I'm thinking, I love gray. I just love gray. I don't have to be absolute about anything. Bring it on. Shades of Gray. They've written a book about that, haven't they?
Oh, don't go there. Don't go there.
So before you leave, and again, thank you for giving up some time on your Friday afternoon to join us and be here. We have some prize winners for simply showing up. Isn't it great? You showed up, and I have a list of 13, lucky 13 prize winners. The prizes are at the door as you came in. So there's a table there with your name on a prize, and your prizes will be something that looks like a gift card, a shirt, a fitness membership, mugs, and OASW grab bags. And we have to thank for these our sponsors, LMS ProLink, Robertson Home Insurance Brokers, and Good Life Fitness. So here goes. I hope you're feeling lucky. Sue Cooperstock. Hey, Sue. Julie Foley, if you haven't had enough today, you've got a little more. Mary Iris Reibling. Mary Iris here. All right, congratulations. Risa Elson. Is Risa here?
She already fixed it up.
Arisa Eisen.
Eisen. Oh, Risa Eisen. Sorry. Okay, great stuff. Sheila McKinnon. Sheila McKinnon. Yahoo. Lorraine Naft. Lorraine Naft. All right. Melissa Friedman. Good stuff. Oh man, we got winners here. It's great. Debbie Davis. Julie Goldthorpe. Jacqueline Rother. Is Jacqueline here? Oh, there you go. That's great. Zena Havelock. Zena, congratulations. Sharon McKay. Ontario loves you, Sharon. Ontario loves you. And Ann Tilley. Is Ann here? Good stuff. So congratulations to all our winners. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks, everybody.